Chris Rock versus Dave Chappelle. Who's funnier, Chris Rock versus Dave Chappelle? There it is.
I choose myself. I crack myself up.
I'm sure you do.
Chris
the Titans.
Rock, Dave Chappelle, Renee Darko.
The Titans of comedy. All right, y'all. What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the last episode of 2022. I was just realizing as we were getting ready for this episode that this was our 81st episode
of the year,
which is a huge milestone for us. We've never hit that amount of episodes in a year. So that is huge.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna give you your props. You ain't got to take it immediately, but I'm gonna give you your props. A lot of it has to do with you coming on as the business manager of the show, as well as almost like helping with timing of content, so to speak, so that I wasn't too much like, a chicken with its head cut off, so to speak, trying to put content out there, as well as operating and doing locums and traveling and so forth. You were able to keep me focused and keep the ball rolling. And just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Renee. Dr. Renee, who is the co-host of the show.
Yes.
As well as
not the temporary co-host anymore.
Not anymore. Business manager.
Wife.
Should I say caretaker of me, so to speak?
Yeah.
Putter-upper of me.
Putter-upper with.
My therapist.
I'm definitely not your therapist.
My handler, so to speak.
I'm definitely not your handler.
If you guys only knew how hard it was to deal with me. So, as she always says and reminds me, what do you say? I'm the what?
You are very difficult to work with.
I am very difficult to work with, and she puts up with me, and yet we are here after 81 episodes. I just want to give a shout out. And also I want to shout out the team. I want to shout out Alfred, as well as I want to shout out Christian, who do the audio as well as the video mixing of this. It takes a lot of work, and they are both virtual, right? One is above the border and then the other one is below the border. And somehow they make it work. And to all the improvements that we've gone through, just even looking at these shorts, when we go from the 10th most popular episode to number 6, you could just see the changing in the audio as well as in the video presentation. So Christian and Alfred, I just want to say on tape, on wax, thank you very much for what y'all do. It is much appreciated. And then also at the same time, the person who edits this episode and looks at it and, decides what's going to be a short. Or who helps with a lot of the back end and deals with us on a personal level, Carla. Yes. I want to give a shout out to you also for joining our team. And folks, it takes a team to make this work. So Carla, thank you very much for helping us with, I would have to say, the executive assistant duties of the job, which is extremely appreciated, is extremely necessary, because we get a lot of correspondence, whether it is spam, whether it is legit. And I think that there's just a lot of room to grow, and it's really hard to scale when it's just me.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank the entire team for putting up with me, for dealing with me, and for helping me grow something that was once a passion project to now literally this is a full-fledged business. And this is fun, and I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy working with each and every one of you all. And then last but not least, I want to thank the listeners as well as the viewers on YouTube. You guys make it really worth tuning in on a putting in and coming into this microphone and speaking to you all. It really makes it worth it.
Basis, yeah.
Thank you very much. So
wait.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to thank the people that I work probably very closely with, if not the most closely with, compared to you, is our sponsors.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Our sponsors who make a lot of this, possible. And, thank you to our sponsors, PS&D Locum Story, Set for Life, Shalwyn Properties. Who else? Who else am I missing? I feel like I'm at the Grammys and the music is about to come on.
Wrap that shit up.
Comp Health. Who else? My mama and all of them and everybody else. You know who you are. But no, seriously, I really want to thank our sponsors for the work that they've done, and making this possible, and really just believing that we have a vision, and that jumping on board with us with our own vision could help to advance their own
physician CEO,
their own visions as well. That's right. Physician CEO is another one. Really big supporter of Docs Outside the Box. So yeah, I want to thank you for that.
And folks, I just want you all to know, like, we strategically work with these companies, these sponsors, because we feel like they bring a huge value add to you. We feel like everything that we talk about in terms of, managing your money or getting your mindset right, or just, handling everything in between, these companies in some form or fashion will help you get to that goal.
Right.
And I think that these are all strategic relationships and partnerships, and we appreciate each and every one of you for at least clicking on the links, going to any of those offers that they may offer, or maybe just contacting them. A lot of that stuff really helps us develop our level of influence. And I think the other thing too is these companies are willing to take a bet on us, even though we may not have like the huge glamorous numbers like certain influencers may have. But also at the same time, no shade on those influencers. I don't think they're really focused on specifically this audience, right? Like they're really focused on mass appeal. And we just want you all to know that, whatever part of the medical healthcare professional continuum you are in, nurse, physician assistant, medical student, resident, attending, respiratory therapist, like, we feel as though each and every one of these companies has some type of value add to you. So,
and then one more shout out I'm going to make to our new video production team as well.
Chris and Shane.
Yep, Chris and Shane.
Yeah, Shane Neal, as well as Chris Francois, part of
Francois.
Excuse me, Francois.
Fran. No, there's no
Francois.
There you go.
Francois. Okay. Our team that Renee found, and we've been working with them, and they've been helping us really kind of create this video series that we still haven't dripped out yet, but it will be coming out very soon. Yeah. That kind of shows what we can do outside of just talking to a microphone and putting out just YouTube videos, which they're all important. But I think that they have been able to help us understand the vision of where Docs Outside the Box should go next.
And then the last one, I promise, is the new kid on the block, who is Jean-Moise.
Oh, yeah.
Or Gene.
2020 Visual.
Yeah, 2020 Visual, or Visual 2020.
He's 2020 Visual.
2020 Visual, yeah. And so he's definitely come on board and helped us do some video production as well. And he's, a young man who really is going to go places. He has great work ethic, and is just so eager to learn. And so, he's been doing really great work. So we want to thank him too for coming aboard and making stuff possible.
And folks who are listening who want to do something similar to what we're doing, or just want to create something, and they're like, damn, like Docs Outside the Box has like literally, they just listed like 7 people. Like, guys, like for several years, it was just, me doing all the edits, me working on all the different types of, formats, whether it's a blog or it's a audio format.
You ain't work on no daggone blog.
Well, okay,
you don't write nothing.
You're right about that. Okay.
You don't write nothing.
But there was a lot of things that I was doing that, was just outside of my wheel mill. And if I don't really get it, I will procrastinate. And I think slowly but surely, all of the revenue that we brought into this podcast, we have just reinvested it to make it better and better and better, and to bring more and more into the team into this. So, with that said,
we're back to the top 10 YouTube shorts of 2022.
In your best, 1990s.
That's right.
Look at the zany ways in which YouTube.
Basically, we went through 10 to 6 the last episode. And now we got to go to
The top five.
4, 3, 2, 1. That's right. Top 5.
And for y'all who are listening, you may see this towel around me. So literally it is 12:20 in the morning. And according to my habits of being an athlete, I got to be working out, very consistently. And as Atomic Habits has changed my life, that's probably going to be one of the first episodes we do of 2023 to kind of talk about my results of using Atomic Habits. I have stuck with it, and I'll talk about it later. But one of the biggest things that he talks about is never not do your habit or what you're supposed to do 2 days in a row. Mm-hmm. Because if you miss it for 2 days in a row, then that is the beginning of a new habit. So I did not work out yesterday on purpose, but if I had missed this workout because we're recording, then that would have been 2 days in a row, and that would have been a beginning of a habit. So we
throw in the towel, Nii.
We recorded an episode, the first episode, and
you have
we
to
took
be
a
on
break.
YouTube to see what I was talking about.
And then we took a break, and then I had to get my workout in before midnight, and now I'm sweating a little bit, and I had the towel around me, but I'm ready to go. I'm dried off.
Ready to go.
I'm good. Let's jump right into this. So why don't we start with number 5, which is with a couple that I've been. I'm not gonna lie. I've been fanboying with this couple for a while. Right. This is with Julien and Kiersten Saunders, also known as Rich and Regular, and this was from episode 322. And this short is called "What's the Endgame for Your Career?"
Yeah.
In essence, how when you start your career, how do you envision your career ending?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to play this short and then we'll jump into it. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said about that emotional relationship with money, realizing that, hey, what's the end game here?
Yeah, I think there's just a universal theme throughout the book of beginning things with the end in mind. We're taught that for school, for all of our various certifications and loops that we have to jump through to get the job. But when it comes to the career, we're taught that is the end. Like you build your identity around like this thing. And we don't have enough role models, specifically in communities of color, that show what's at the end of a successful career. And there's a huge gap in the stories that we've all heard and the examples that we've seen around what is life after work. And the premise of cashing out is to get you to start to think about that early so that you can use your time at work more wisely and your money can work harder than you can.
Boom. There it is.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
I think I fanboyed a little bit too much in this episode. I should have asked some tougher questions, but I just admire this couple a lot because I think that their book, Cashing Out, the link will be in the show notes. The book, Cashing Out, really gives a blueprint in whatever professional career that you're in, that the way in which our parents looked at employment, looked at a career is way different than how we look at it now. Millennials, Gen Xers, and so forth. And that includes doctors.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And I think a lot of people, and like news alert to the med students who are listening and to the residents that are listening, listen, I'm telling you right now, in the corporate world that we are in, particularly in medicine, this applies to you. You need to be, in my opinion, looking at your career in terms of how you're entering in and also at the same time how you're going to exit. Because if you're not intentional about it, you're going to be going through it all willy-nilly, and that means that someone else is going to plan your career and they're going to make you feel like a cog. And I'm going to be very honest with you. So in this episode, we talked about literally in the professional workspace outside of medicine, folks having a 15-year career. Right. Like working for 15 years and then whether it's at the same company or a different company, but whatever it is, you are out. And that is it. You are cashing out, making the plans. That means that during the time when you're working, you are developing and hoarding a whole bunch of skills that you're learning at this one company, or you're saving, building runway for with the premise of you eventually leaving, and then you go and you create whatever you want to create on your own. Right. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I think doctors should have this same type of mentality. I do believe doctors should be in it for 15 years and then bounce. Because I think in so many ways that you can look at things, you get stale after 10 years. You get stale after 15 years. You get
disgruntled. You get burnt out. You essentially go into a profession, looking at it like this is the thing I want to do with the rest of my life. And then once the rest of your life starts, you're like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And not that everyone feels that way, but I think enough people feel that way. that, yeah, there should be an end goal in mind, right? I think that was Stephen Covey who wrote that in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is that you have to begin with the end in mind. What is this going to look like at the end of your career? And I don't think enough of us actually think about that. And by the time we get to the end of our careers, oftentimes it's a very contentious end. It didn't go exactly the way that we thought it was going to go, or it went completely differently than we ever thought it was going to go.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why some people have burnout. I really believe that a lot of people get burnout because they get to a point where they realize that the reason why, or my 17-year-old self or my 19-year-old self or however young I was self did not envision me practicing medicine in this form or fashion.
Yeah, like
and
this.
That may, obviously the majority of times that we hear it occurs as an attending, but it may occur even as a resident, right? And I think it's very important for people to just think about this as, almost like incremental, right? Like, okay, what is the first 5 years of my career going to look like? And then what's the next maybe 3 years going to look like after that as I transition to someplace else, or maybe even another hospital or to another practice? And then what's the next phase of that career going to look like as you're transitioning out? And I know a lot of people who are listening are going to say, that's selfish. You spent all this time training, such a waste to only give it 15 years. Medicine needs you and so forth. And, I take it back to the episodes that we did earlier when we were talking about Ali Abdal, who's the resident in the UK who decided to walk away from medicine. And I think he made a really good point where he said, like, when you're in industrialized countries, particularly United States, UK, when you see an industrialized country, you know what I'm talking about, right? That, oftentimes, is it the system that's saving patients, or is it, you as individuals? And when you compare that to working in sub-Saharan Africa or working in areas that, are third world, quote unquote, so to speak.
And you're one doctor to 75,000 people.
Right? Like, what's your effectiveness there? Right. I think your effectiveness is obviously going to be in a place that needs you way more than being in the system.
It's much different. Yeah.
So I stand with those comments, and I know that's going to rankle some people's feelings, but I do feel like 15 years and call it a day and move on to something else.
Well, but I think it's also, I got a couple of things from this episode, and one specifically about medicine was, are they saying to leave medicine, or are they saying to leave your career, which to me are not necessarily the same things, right? Your career may be what it looks like, in a certain moment in time, right? So your career may be as a practicing physician. For me, at one point, my career looked like a full scope OB. That's what it looked like. I was going to the OR, going to the clinic, going to the ER, doing GYN, doing deliveries. That's what my career looked like. And then my career looked differently after that. Then it was, no, as of now, I'm an OB hospitalist. So I, do mostly OB and emergency GYN.
And even now, like, you prefer to work at times where you can specifically give employed doctors times off.
Exactly. Right? And so that's the question, right? Like, does that mean to drop medicine altogether? Or does it mean you need to pivot? You need to cash out on what it is that your career is in this moment. Because let me tell you, 15 years of doing the same thing can get very mundane.
I mean, that's what they tell people who stay in residencies. When they go to medical school at one institution, then they stay for residency in the same institution.
Oh, I definitely know somebody like that.
And then they become an attending at the same institution. It's like, yo.
Like, go somewhere, learn something, meet new people.
It's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. I actually had a senior who was like that. Went to school, in the Rutgers system, / whatever, New Jersey, UMD&J, and stayed in the complex. And I believe she's still in the complex right now. And it's like, wow, like, so this is it. Like,
You know me.
that's it. You don't know nobody else.
I'm way more blunt. I'm like, yo, I think that's stale. I think you get stale like that. I think that you don't get a chance to see how medicine is practiced. Like when I left Grady and went down to Jackson, like I wouldn't say there was a huge difference in how trauma is practiced, but those small little micro differences between what happens in Georgia versus what happens in Florida, that's enough to really help me feel well-rounded. The amount of trauma or the type of trauma that we were seeing even in Miami was dramatically different than the type of trauma that we were seeing in Georgia, right? Like we were getting traumas from different countries, right? Yeah. People from the Caribbean who wanted to repatriate and they maybe were on a cruise and they fractured something and they were in, a Caribbean country and they would come to Miami. That's something that you don't see
in Georgia.
Georgia, you don't see anywhere above like Florida.
And just the patient population, right? Like if you just think about it, like all the cultural differences that you see. I trained at UMDNJ, in New Jersey, and then I went out and practiced in Idaho. And let me tell you something, damn demographics not the same. Okay. So
how quickly did you get sick of potatoes?
It's so funny because when I arrived to Idaho, it was like the potato harvest. And do you know they let school out, like elementary school? They let elementary school out so that the kids can help harvest the potatoes. I was like, wait, what? Y'all ain't got no school because y'all picking potatoes.
I just feel like it's like you just see like these little kids like scraping and like peeling off potatoes and them getting all these finger injuries and stuff like that.
I was like, yo, I ain't in New Jersey no more.
How soon before
click
kids
my
start
heels
stealing?
3 times. Click, click, click. I ain't in New Jersey no more.
Idaho. I had to fly out there to go get you to come back. Damn.
Get out of here.
Sheesh. Come back to reality, yo.
Come back to you mean?
That's another episode. And that's a great segue. Let's transition to number 4, guys.
Number 4.
Number 4 is episode 263. This was Chris Rock versus Dave Chappelle. And this is basically a
hot take.
Yeah, this is it's not a hot take because I actually believe this, right?
Okay.
This is basically my thoughts on who's funnier, Chris Rock versus Dave Chappelle. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Like I'm not a big fan of satire comedy. I'm not a big fan of observational comedy. That's not the type of comedy I grew up liking. Mm-hmm. So I'll be very honest. Like I don't appreciate that type of comedy.
You like more storytelling?
I like funny comedy.
What does that like?
I like comedy that makes me bust the gut laughing.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I don't like to chuckle. Yeah, you know what? Why don't we just get to playing it and then we'll jump into my thoughts on that. All right?
Okay.
All right. The next suggestion was Dave Chappelle, his Saturday Night Live monologue, the most recent one, which was okay. And then all of a sudden it suggested Chris Rock's monologue from the Oscars that he hosted back in 2016. And I watched it and I was like, man, his presence, his comedy skills, when I compare it to Dave Chappelle is overrated, I think. And I just think Chris Rock, I just think he's a better comedian.
Here go your downloads. Going down.
Listen, there's no beef going on between them.
We're going to start the beef.
We're going to start beef, but if you had to choose, who would you choose, guys? Me, I would choose Chris Rock any day. I don't think there's any form of comedy or any category that Dave Chappelle could even touch Chris Rock.
There it is. I choose myself. I crack myself up.
I'm sure you do, but we ain't talking about that. We talking about the titans.
Rock, Dave Chappelle, Renee Darko.
The titans of comedy. And I don't know. I just, I feel like Dave Chappelle gets a lot of props because people conflate his TV show and the heights that it hit and how funny it was. It was very funny. It was very groundbreaking, as well as some of the mystique that was built into him walking away from a really large contract, going to live somewhere in Africa, and then, basically walking away from that, everybody thinking he's crazy, and then basically getting a bag several years later that was either the same or more than that. And he's been able to kind of make some power moves that we've never seen an actor, a comedian, an actress, or anybody in entertainment from an individual standpoint do. And I think he gets a lot of adulation from that. I think he gets a lot of props from that, deservedly so. But I think that kind of bleeds into people saying, well, he's the GOAT. And because he was able to do that, that means his comedy is great. And I'm like, no. Like, I've watched each and every of his comedy specials. I don't think he's that funny.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I get what he's saying. Like, there are people who disagree with a lot of the things that he's saying with the LGBTQ community and so forth. I get all that stuff. This is not a commentary on that. I'm just saying that the stuff that he says is not that funny. Like, in terms of saying something that is a punchline, I don't get it. So when people say, like, oh, yeah, like, you know, I consider his comedy to be the best ever, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I just don't understand how, like, even he said it. Like, he's like, he once was... he was being interviewed by, I think he was being interviewed by Will Smith. They were in a car going somewhere. And he literally just said, like, I get nervous when Eddie Murphy comes. And basically it was like, he basically boiled it down to, because I know Eddie's better than me. And it's like, it's clear as day he's better than you, right? Like, Eddie Murphy was no joke.
Right.
Eddie Murphy was he could do observational comedy. He could do, you know, the hardcore comedy. Like, he was the man. And I guess maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia because when Eddie Murphy was on his heyday, like, I was like, you know, 6, 7, you know, like, I was in my formative years and, you know, watching TV.
Yeah.
But I still think his comedy is better. Like, I think his hold of, he's just better.
Right.
So when I see Chris Rock, I see Chris Rock as, I don't think he's as good as Eddie Murphy.
Right.
But I think he's way better than Chris Rock. And I just
Than Dave Chappelle.
Than Dave Chappelle. I just don't get the whole, like, he's the Dave Chappelle's the GOAT. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I'm sorry, but
I think you're right. I think that there is some sort of mystique around, especially the fact that it's like, oh, you must have gone on, you know, some spiritual journey, you know, to Africa to have walked away from your show at, you know, at the point that you did and walk away from so much money. It must have been, you know, this spiritual journey. And I don't know what he was doing, you know, as far as walking away from the show. I don't know that he had a spiritual journey versus he was just like, I'm tired of this, you know, I don't want to do this no more. But yeah, I do think people are fascinated with the fact that somebody would walk away from that much money and then come back and get that much money. And people maybe are saying he's the GOAT because they're just so fascinated by that story, you know, more so than what he says. Now, you know, even controversially, the subject matter that he covers is still very is very, very socially relevant topics.
Yeah.
You know, and he doesn't shy away from either giving his real opinion or his comedic opinion, which I'm assuming those two are the same.
Right.
Right? I'm assuming those two are the same, but he doesn't shy away from giving that opinion. And I think part of that, you know, he's the GOAT is that he doesn't shy away from giving that social opinion. That he doesn't, you know, he talks about the hard topics and he does so in a very controversial way, which I'm going to tell you, I think people feel like it resonates with them. And, you know, the people who call him the GOAT feel like his opinions resonate with them, that he is saying things that maybe they can't say. And so that's also why they're like, oh, he's the GOAT, because
I get that
he's
part.
saying what I feel like I want to say, but I can't say that.
He gets away with it. And
He
I think
gets away with it.
I feel like there's a level of mainstream that he has that I think a lot of people
Yes.
aspire to. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that his comedic style is something that I think whatever background you come from, I think the heights that he's attained, whatever background you have, I think is admirable. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are admiring that as opposed to admiring the content. Because I tell you, he'll say things and I'm like, and people are like, oh yeah, what he says is true. And I'm like, yeah, I get what he's saying is true.
It's funny because it's true.
No. I get what he's saying is true.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't find it that funny the way in which he's saying it. I get that it's kind of like, that's wild. Yeah. Well, boy, he crazy. Like, but that's it.
Right.
I feel like a comedian should be making me be like, oh snap! I can't believe he said that, and that is so funny. I feel like he's kind of like.
Yeah, no, but I think people fall into the category of thinking it's funny because it's true. And whether it's true to you or to, whatever, whatever principles or values you aspire to, if you're calling him the GOAT, it's very likely that you think it's funny because you think it's true.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
But just because it's true doesn't mean that it's funny, though.
I understand that, but they think because it's true, it's funny.
But the point is to make people laugh, not say things that are true.
I understand that.
If that's the point, then it would be like a lecturer or a philosopher or, somebody come in to speak and say, like X, Y, and Z occurs, so that's why it is. Oh, yeah, you're right. But like the point is I want to laugh.
Right, I know that.
You're not making me laugh. You're making me chuckle.
But you also have to account for differences in sense of humor. Right? Like people have different types of sense of humor. Some people's sense of humor is very light. They like to hear light jokes. They don't like to hear anything too heavy. They don't like to hear things that are vulgar, things that are potentially offensive. They don't like to hear that. And other people are like, no, take me all the way to the max. Bring me down to like the dirt on the ground. I want to be gritty and grimy. And that for me is the funniest thing. Like there is that gamut. Right?
Let's read a comment from YouTube.
Because people were like, what?
Hey, yo, this comment from YouTube is so like out of left field, but it just kind of makes sense. If you guys hear it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So Dave's style is high off great weed type. But your impression, but I guess he says, but he impresses, but his impression or his information he delivers. Chris style's like crack.
What?
You don't know what you're going to get. Is he good tonight? Is he going to pace the hallways? Is going to be loud as hell? This is bad for me because I love them both, but they can't be compared with each other. One is great weed and the other is good crack. It's whatever you looking for. Now, I don't know about y'all.
Because I got questions.
Let me tell you something right now. I'm not telling myself whatsoever. I ain't rock with any of that, but I cannot find anybody who would probably say that there's such thing as good crack. Right?
First of all,
what is good crack? There's no such thing as good crack.
How you know the difference? How you even know what weed and I can see how you know what weed is like. How you know what crack is like? You telling on yourself? I got questions.
Yeah, all I know is that I got a feeling that if you knew what good crack is, you would not be able to make a comeback and write a YouTube comment. I'm calling BS on that. I don't think he knows what good crack is. No. There's no way.
There's no way that he knows what good crack is. Yeah, that's kind of a very weird comment. But I guess what he's saying essentially is that Dave Chappelle is consistent in comparison. I'm saying that's what he's saying.
No.
Dave Chappelle is consistent in comparison to Chris Rock in that he feels like Chris Rock is going to inconsistently make you laugh.
No.
So
disagree.
Anyway, that's what he's saying.
Let's move on, because maybe we need to get a lawyer in this bad boy. So let's move on to let's move on to number 3. Third most popular YouTube short this year was episode 321 when we hooked up and talked with James Dockery. And the name of this short is Why Pay a Lawyer to Negotiate for You? Mm-hmm. This one had a lot of downloads.
Yes.
And I think what I looked at the YouTube analytics, it was more than just medical people listening to this.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of different people were just like, yo, really? This makes sense. So let's go ahead and play.
Run it.
Let's play this. How much does this cost?
I'm going to give you the best lawyer answer possible.
It depends, I bet you.
It depends. Years of experience, both from the attorney as well as from the physician, the difficulty of the contract, the length of time that it will take the review. There are so many different factors. Most attorneys will charge either a flat fee or an hourly rate. Hourly rates can range from $300 an hour up to $800 an hour.
I can tell you right now, there's people listening who are like, good Lord, $300 an hour.
Oh, that's cheap, brother.
Why should they pay for a lawyer to help them negotiate something?
If you think about it for a second, your employer has invested thousands of dollars in hiring their own lawyer to negotiate and represent them. Aren't you that valuable? 4 years in college, 4 years in med school, residency. You have much more training and education than any professional athlete. And almost every professional athlete will have someone negotiating the deal for them.
Yeah.
That's a mic drop right there, man.
Yo, when he said, I think what hit me was when he said, but the hospital has invested thousands of dollars.
When he said that.
It's like, yeah, that's so true. That's like going up against Mike Tyson and going, I don't need no training.
I think I can beat Mike Tyson. Remember that? I think I can beat Mike Tyson. So it's like, why are you walking into this? Why are you walking into this knife fight? Or excuse me, why are you walking into this fight with a knife and they got guns?
Yeah.
Yo, these hospitals ain't playing.
Nope.
And you walking in here with, I trust this, I trust that. Listen.
Or I know this, I know
If you are
that.
listening to this right now, you need to get a lawyer. $800 or $1,000 or 2 G's is not going to set you back. If this lawyer, for the most part, if they're worth their cheese, if they're worth everything that they're saying that they're worth, they're for the most part going to get you multiples of tens of thousands of dollars or protect you from losing multiples of tens of thousands of dollars. It is worth it. And I'm telling you right now, in negotiating with a hospital, when it comes down to just X's and O's, is a very humbling situation. I'll tell you why. Because when they're able to let you know specifically on a cost basis or fair market value how much you're worth, and you literally have to swallow that and be like, but I feel like they're like, listen, I don't care what you feel. I don't care what you think you're worth. This is what hospital that's 15 miles from us or 10 miles from us is paying trauma surgeons or OBs or or internal medicine doctors. And this is how much we're going to pay you. It is an extremely acerbic discussion. You're just like, damn, that's all I'm worth. Yeah, that's going to be the word for the episode. I do that at times, guys. Like, I pick a word, and that is my SAT word, and I'm going to stick with it.
Or a phrase like former fashion. You know how many times you say former fashion? I really should have Alfred put together a whole reel of you saying former fashion, but that's okay.
Well, it's the end of the year, so that statute of limitations is ended.
I don't think so. But no, like, for real.
Why do people do that? But no, and then they move on to another point.
Because we don't want to talk about what you talk about. So anyway... That's another one. No, like that is so true. The other thing is, how long have you had your mouth?
I know, right? For folks watching on YouTube, I'm drinking some liquids.
From a sippy cup, mind you.
From a sippy cup.
Yeah. We won't say what's in the sippy cup. But but yeah, no, that really resonated with me because I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you, tee up your own team so that you can go against this big dog? This is a whole hospital. They don't have one lawyer. They have a team of lawyers. And you coming in with your little, resident knowledge, of how to float an IJ. And you think that all of a sudden,
how to put in an IJ. Floating is like float a swan.
Whatever. I don't do that stuff. This is why you don't want an OB floating your IJ.
Yeah, you definitely solidified that.
Okay. So anyway, you coming in with that knowledge and thinking that it will translate to what's on a contract, how to protect yourself, how to make more money.
I think the best is when you have neurosurgeons and cardiothoracic surgeons and all the real big wigs like the orthopedic surgeons. They come in thinking they know so much, and I'm just sitting there like, y'all the dumbest, because y'all think y'all so smart. Y'all think that y'all gonna get paid so much, and then they walk into a trap because they think that I'm the big dog. Why do I need a lawyer?
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to,
They're going to take care of me because they need me.
Because they need me, and I'm big and bad, and I'm the biggest person at this hospital. And then they come back and it's fine the first year. They're good. The first year, you good, right? The second year, you might be good. You good,
year
right?
3, 4, 5?
Year 3, 4, 5, you're like, wait, I can't go home. I don't have anybody to cover me. It's all these different things that you never thought about, and they got you.
Yeah,
and
we have seen that.
Extremely important for you all, no matter who you are. When they say it's a standard contract, I don't care. I still get it reviewed by a lawyer.
Exactly. Standard doesn't mean anything. Mm-mm. The other thing is in terms of teeing yourself up, right? Now is the time, during which a lot of residents are probably going to be looking at, their contracts for their, for their new jobs, the ones that are graduating, and teeing yourself up doesn't mean just looking for a lawyer and going through the contract. Those of you who either are going to be graduating next year or you're still looking for a job this year, another way you can tee yourself up, is by getting a team of people who really understand the landscape, understand, what this is going to look like, what this job search landscape is going to look like. And so we're working with Provider Solutions and Development.
Yeah, but before we get there, I think that before we get to the solution, I think that concept causes people to be scared. They get paralyzed and they feel like, well, how am I going to build a team? Like I know how to quote unquote float IJs. I don't know how to find the person who can teach me how to do a CV or teach me how to do a mock interview or teach me how to even find a job, like wherever it may be, or then take me, like, I don't know any of that stuff. So I'll figure this out. But I agree with you. Like, we partnered with PS&D,
specifically
Provider Solutions and Development, because they literally will take you through the educational process of getting you from step A, looking for a job or setting up what your expectations are for a job, all the way to the end where you're negotiating a contract.
Right.
And I'm telling you right now, guys, here's the cheat code. Don't listen to your attendings. They don't know. Particularly if you're at an academics facility, they don't know. Like, I'm saying a whole bunch of different things, and then people are like, yo, I can't believe he's saying that. There's going to be some docs who are going to be pissed. But it's the truth.
They're going to be like, unsubscribe.
But it's going to be the truth, though. There's a lot of academic doctors who are at academic institutions who, like, have never been anywhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Or they've gone from academic, institution to another academic institution.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it's like to maximize how much money they can bring in.
Yeah.
They don't know how to advocate for themselves in terms of, what's going to be, how many hours of FTE they're going to work, a full-time employee versus half-time employee, or protected time, doing research, getting grants. What does all that mean? They have no clue.
Yeah. And let's face it, there's the, I did it, so you should do it too, right?
Man,
so I went through the fire, I went through the coals, so you should go through that as well. And the reality is that the advice that you get may not be advice that is necessarily for your benefit, but more for, no, like, you need to suffer too. I need, my name is Misery and I need company. And you're going to be that company. And you need to be very careful about that. And Provider Solutions and Development, they actually have resident advisors that work on behalf of the residents to kind of cover the things that Nii already mentioned, your CV, your expectations, your mock interviews, just what is the landscape, understanding what the compensation models are, understanding, that you can have deal breakers, that a standard contract doesn't mean that you can't negotiate, and so when you have, the Provider Solutions and Development team working on your behalf, not only can you do that with them with a resident advisor, but then you can also utilize their services for recruitment. So, so you're not necessarily tied into being like, oh, well, I have to take a job with them. They literally will just coach you for free with a resident advisor. Because y'all always talking about I'm looking for somebody to help me. I'm looking for somebody to bounce ideas off. I'm looking off, you're always looking for somebody.
This is a free solution,
guys. For free. And there's like no string attached that you have to then go with their recruiters. You could literally be like, hey, I need a resident advisor. And oh, by the way, I might let you help me find a job, which at that point you probably will help, ask them to help you find a job. But the reality is you need somebody on your side who can give you that unbiased advice and just really teach you what the landscape is. So
there it is.
What's the link for Provider Solutions and Development? Isn't it like info.psdconnect.org?
Correct.
Right? info.psdconnect.org. Go on there. You can look. They have a GME lounge also, which kind of does like webinars and things like that. They have what they call power hours, where, they talk about, again, negotiations of contracts and mock interviews, all the things that you need to know, especially as a new resident coming out. But even if you're not a new resident, coming out, that, if you're an attending, who's already out, they can still help you with those kinds of things. And I would say, just like the short talked about, like, don't show up there with your bloomers showing.
Yeah, don't be Pollyanna-ish, guys.
Exactly.
It's okay. It's okay to have a lawyer look at your contract and
absolutely
even tell you that, hey, there's really not much you can negotiate here.
Yeah.
At least you from the contract, if there's not much that's going to change, I think the most important thing is how you get into the contract and how you get out of the contract. And that's worth its weight, I think, for anybody to charge you whatever they may charge you, even if it's $600, $800 or $1,000. And then that'll save you six figures.
Yeah, and then finally, I'm just going to say that I know a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to get a lawyer because I don't want to scare the job off. And, I don't want them to think, X, Y, like as if you're going to lose the job because you got a lawyer to look at your contract. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have a lawyer look at your contract and they realize you don't have a lawyer look at your contract, honestly, they're just going to be looking at you like a sucker. Because they're going to be like, anybody who is smart enough.
Remember Looney Tunes? They'll have the guy's head turn into like a lollipop.
Yeah, exactly. Sucker on it. Exactly. Because they're going to be thinking, anybody who comes to this table looking at this contract that has all of these terms and conditions in it and doesn't have a lawyer look at it, got to be a sucker. And they're going to realize that they could walk all over you. And that's exactly what they're going to do.
Sucker?
So, sucker.
All right.
I'm going to get you, sucker.
Now, with that, let's move on to number 2.
Ooh, we getting close to number 1. What's number 1?
Number 2 is from episode 276. This was a resident with just a needle and a syringe, and that was you, actually.
I don't know why that particular short got so many views.
So, folks, this was basically Renee describing her time in 2010. 2010 or 2011?
Yeah, 2010.
2010 slightly after the devastating earthquake that occurred in Haiti. And Renee was describing how she had to fly her family's from Haiti. She actually had family members who were actually there at the time. And she had to fly into the Dominican Republic and then drive several hours into Haiti because the airports were closed. Basically, every other way to get into Haiti was closed. And she was dealing with a patient who probably had a perforated appendicitis, and she had to do something to do a diagnosis. So let's jump ahead to see what her non-surgical self had to do to figure out what she had to do.
Whatever. I was the only OBGYN that was in that clinic, and I was a resident, which also made me feel very uncomfortable because I was like, well, I would never do this in the United States. Go and see patients on my own and then send them home and not run it by somebody. There's literally a metal gurney, no mattress on, no nothing. This one young lady came in. I was the only doctor on the campsite. And when I say campsite, I mean literally campsite. As I'm examining this young lady, I don't know whether or not she has an ectopic pregnancy or if something else was going on. Problem is, I don't have an ultrasound. I don't have anything. I got a speculum and I have a needle and syringe. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to old school it because I don't know what else to do. I take a needle and I place it into basically behind the cervix. And I pull back to see what is in her peritoneum. And it's a bunch of pus. And I'm like, I think
when
she
they
has
have pus, they need us.
Right.
Yeah, so she had appendicitis, correct?
We ended up transferring her to the Brazilian Army's campsite where they had like this kind of like a MASH campsite, and they came back I think the next day or 2 days later, and they were like, yeah, you were right, she has appendicitis. So they operated on her, and she did very well. Her story was a little confusing because she was telling me she hadn't had a period in like 6 weeks, and I was like, okay, so is she pregnant? But I didn't have a pregnancy test to give her. It was just crazy. And that day, I remember specifically, we were seeing a lot of GYN patients, but they were like, literally like, oh, I have discharge. Oh, I have discharge. Oh, I have discharge. And I was like, okay, we are running out of speculums. And I said, I'm not going to use this last speculum. And we had closed up the clinic. I was like, I'm not using this last speculum. I'm just going to see the people who have discharge. I'm just going to examine them in a different way. So I'm not going to waste the speculum. I have one more speculum left. That was it. And she came in. And luckily, I was able to do that procedure on her and diagnose her. But yeah, she was sick.
So you basically did the safest way to do a paracentesis. You basically went through the most dependent portion of the body.
Coldocentesis,
Coldocentesis.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering why this one got so many views. The only reason that I can say is that it was very graphic.
Maybe.
It's very graphic, and
maybe the needle and syringe kind of.
From this, you can't tell that this happened during the earthquake, the Haitian earthquake.
Yeah.
So I think that because it was very graphic, and it was just you saying as a resident, you did something that you would not necessarily do in the United States. I think that's what caused people to, kind of tune in and look. That I still just find it hard to believe that that's like the number two YouTube short that we had.
It was number one for a while.
Yeah,
it was number one for a while.
Yeah.
But
just to let y'all know, man, when y'all in residency, man, pay attention to those old school methods or something that you read in a textbook or things that you don't necessarily do all the time. You never know when you're going to get the chance to use it. And I'm just letting y'all know right now, man, do not sleep on global humanitarian work. It is... as close to God's work as you can say. If you're not even religious, I don't know what else you can describe it as, but it is much needed work. And I think that when you go to third world countries, you'll oftentimes find out that, all the tools and tricks that you have here in the United States, they're not sustainable. They're not sustainable in a.
Give me a CT scan. Ain't no CT scan.
There's no
give
CT
me ultrasound.
Scan. I was doing. You know how many appendicitis I've taken out or appendixes that we've diagnosed.
Appendices.
With whatever it is, with an ultrasound. Or how many times we don't get labs on post-op patients over because we can't afford it.
Can't
right?
afford it.
Or if we take out an appendix or we take out a gallbladder, it's just extremely normal here in the United States that it gets sent for pathology. Well,
you just throw it away because
they're going to get charged.
Somebody's got to pay. Yeah.
So unless you look at that gallbladder or you look at that appendix, and if it does not look pathologic, just know that whoever you're giving it to, they're going to have to pay for that.
Right.
And, that's going to be possibly the equivalent of like $200 to $300, which is a big deal to them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I definitely learned from doing global humanitarian work is to be a lot more resource or utilization minded, but also at the same time, really understanding the concept of diagnosis. And using my diagnostic skills outside of just...
Use your mind, use your hands.
Or just use your differential.
Right. Use your differential. Yeah. Really just understanding that you are not going to necessarily get the diagnosis that you usually get from your images or from your labs or from your whatever. You have to use your diagnostic skills. And then the other thing I will say about global health is also realizing that you are not there to be the great American savior. That is not your job.
She about to cook, y'all. She about to cook.
That is not your job.
Renee's about to cook.
That is definitely not your role, not your title. You are there to learn and to teach. You are there for an educational exchange. Now, depending on the mission that you go on, that might ebb and flow a little bit, because I do know that there are some medical missions that are very much they literally don't have, the resources to do that. They don't actually even have the human resources to do some of the things, that they are doing, like the cleft lip and palate and things like that, or the really esoteric type surgeries. I get that. But most people are not going on those types of missions. And so, temper yourself. Go there to learn, go there to teach, go there to exchange information with the healthcare providers, the healthcare staff that are on the ground, and really soak it in and be appreciative of the fact that you're probably learning something that you're going to take back with you to the United States, because I certainly have.
Yeah.
So
last but not least, Alfred Christian, give us a drum roll, please. Number one, and this ain't no surprise, people were really talking about this.
Ripping and roaring on this one.
And this is something that literally I was just watching TV and watching YouTube, and I was like, why are people tripping about this? But what are the aspects that you can relate this to medicine? And this was Team Tom or Team Gisele. This is episode 319, talking about, Tom Brady possibly getting a divorce. This is before we knew he was getting a divorce.
Before the divorce.
Getting a divorce for, basically having a 40-day retirement and having this 20-year career and going back trying to get number 8 in terms of his Super Bowl rings. And this causing a bunch of strife in his household. And,
and a bunch of buzz on social media.
Yeah. And we basically said, like, which team are you on? Are you on Team Tom Brady, which is, listen, I'm going to keep doing this till I can't do it anymore. And to heck what the collateral damage to my family is. Or are you on Team Gisele, which is, hey, listen, you coming home?
You got kids.
You got kids. So let's go ahead and watch this short. I actually think both of them are being selfish. How many more championships do you want in light of sacrificing the health, the sanctity, so to speak, of this marriage, as well as your kids and so forth?
I don't think they're both being selfish. I don't think that it is unreasonable to ask someone who created a family to spend time with their family. Now, what would be unreasonable is if she wanted to start a family with him and said, listen, now I want to have kids, where he might have said before, not too keen on having kids. Dude, you have, 3 children? Preteen? You're missing their formative years? You're going to miss a lot. And see, what people don't realize about children, they say, well, I'll do this now and I'll spend time with my kids later. You know what your kids want to do later? They want to spend time with you.
Yeah, they want to take that generational wealth, though.
And?
They want to get that scholarship.
And you put them on the earth, you might as well give them something because you didn't give them time. You might as well give them dollars.
Yo, the amount of comments. I'm not even going to go into the comments.
Yeah, the
because
Instagram comments were already off the charts.
The
but,
YouTube comments were just crazy too.
Yeah, the YouTube comments were a little crazy
This was
too.
number one, our most highly viewed YouTube short. We got a significant amount of comments. People were not playing. There were a lot of people who were, I think majority of people were Team Tom on this, but mainly the people who are watching on YouTube are men based off of the demographics that we have and so forth. And the age group is within the age group of people who would watch football and so forth. So I wasn't too surprised with that.
Right.
But, this was basically asking the audience, which team are you on? Are you on Team Tom, which is, look, I should play until I keep going, particularly if I'm playing at a high level, which he is. He's not having the best year this year, but technically he's at a point where he's still playing at such a high level that he could win another championship. Is that important? The ability to be so high achieving and to set the bar so high, does that drag your entire family with you versus Team Gisele, which is, we want you home, right? And we want to spend time with you. And, what's the difference between 7 and 8 rings? Come home. And that's a very difficult discussion for a couple of reasons. One, because, you meet someone who's very high achieving, and in many regards, I think that's what probably attracted you to that person, and possibly vice versa. When do you put that down and really say, you know what, it's time to put that down. Let me focus on family.
Yeah.
But what happens when you put it down, you focus on family, and maybe you realize that their life doesn't orbit around you anymore?
Well,
Because that's one of the accusations, is that he came home and was like, so let's go hang out. And they're like, yeah, bro, like,
we good.
we good.
You weren't here before. We got lives.
And he was like, well, since y'all good, I'm going to be good, and I'm going to go back and play football,
Right.
which
Right.
is very interesting. So,
Well, I mean, if that's one of the things that he is complaining about, then that speaks more to his interaction or lack of interaction, lack of incorporation of himself into the family. I just put our 5-year-old to bed, and even though he was with you all day, he was playing Optimus Prime with you. You took the dog out. We're dog sitting. It's a whole thing. He did all these things with you all day long, right? I put him to bed, and he was asking for you, right? He was asking for you. And for me, that says to me that he's really attached to you. You've incorporated yourself into his life. You've incorporated yourself into his life, into the family, such that he actually wants to be with you. And for Tom Brady if this is true, that Tom Brady has said, well, I went home and my kids are really kind of like, it's kind of like, well, did you make yourself a stranger in your own home? Right? The other thing is, like some of the comments that we got about, well, would she have married him if he was the GOAT and this, that, and the other? I'm like,
Well, he wasn't a GOAT when they got married.
well, whatever, but he was on his way, right? He was on his way. He was a high achieving, football player. Apparently he had 3 rings or whatever already before I don't know the whole story, right? But apparently he was a high achieving football player. She was a supermodel. Like, do you think she would have married him if he, wasn't a high achieving football player? I mean, power attracts power.
Well,
right?
you mean the opposite. Do you think he would have married her if she wasn't a
No,
supermodel?
the opposite. Do you think she would have married him if he wasn't a big time football player?
I mean, doesn't that go to what they're saying, which is the reason she married him was because he was a big
Exactly.
football
But
player.
that's what I'm saying.
I don't get what I don't get.
I'm
what you're,
saying
I don't
power.
Get the point that you're trying
I'm
to say.
saying power attracts power. That doesn't just go one way. Like, yeah, she was a supermodel. He was attracted to that. He was a football player.
No, I think the comments were saying that she was attracted to a
high achieving football player.
right, and then so are you trying to say that he was attracted to her?
If he weren't a high achieving football player, you think she would have been attracted to him? Obviously not. Like, it doesn't make any sense to even ask that question, right? Is what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense to ask that question. They were both high achieving people in their respective industries. So to ask that question is just dumb, right? Like, that's it. And not to mention that it's a moot point. Like, we're not talking about 2 people who are dating. We're talking about people who are married and who have children. And it's very clear that either the people who...
She's cooking, y'all. She's cooking.
Anyway, it's very clear
She's cooking, y'all.
that the people who are so hyper-focused on, well, would she have married him if he wasn't the GOAT and what, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, like, that's not what this is about. Like, there are other dynamics in a family. Like, and if you don't understand the importance of a father to their children, then I suggest you go to therapy, because you missing a vital point in this entire dynamic, right? What are you doing? Why are you getting up?
I'm getting something right now.
Okay, so while I finish my point. Anyway.
Well, I think we kind of beat this horse.
Well, no, I'm not finished yet.
Oh,
But I do want to say something that I said to you the other day offline.
Okay.
Was that, how do we know that there isn't something that she's dealing with at home with the kids, right? That she's like, no, like, they need their father, or one of them needs their father. Today I was watching Judge Judy. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a big Judge Judy fan. But there was a mother and a father who they are divorced, and so they co-parent. But they have 5 kids together. But one of the sons, the 16-year-old son, was giving problems at home, and she was just like, I literally don't know what to do anymore. So she took him to live with his father, right? Those things happen. Those things happen. They happen all the time. Right? Will Smith's father said to him when he and what's her name, Cherie?
Yeah.
When he and Cherie,
first wife.
Right, his first wife. When he and Cherie split, and he went to go, Trey went to go live with his mother, and it was a little bit of a contentious situation. Even Will Smith's father was like, wait, just wait. When he turns 13, he's going to come to you. He's going to want to be with you. And that's exactly what happened, was that after a while, he craved his father. Like, these things happen. And kids acting up and needing that second parent, it happens. So we don't know what the dynamic is at home. And I wish people would just stop being so superficial as to just be like, oh, well, it's because she's attractive. Oh, it's because he's attractive. I'm like, I mean,
come on.
They're well beyond that. They are over 10 years married. Like, this is stupid.
Asking for more nuance or asking for people to be deeper on YouTube and leaving comments when they're anonymous. Come on. We already know what's going to happen. So
anyway,
I think you're asking for something obvious. So, but guys, that was the top 5 YouTube Shorts, right? So let's go through it again. That was What's the End Game for Your Career? That's Kiersten and Julien Saunders from Rich and Regular podcast and YouTube acclaim. And then from there, we had Chris Rock versus Dave Chappelle. I think we beat this, right? Like, we know. Chris Rock always, right? Number 3 is Why Pay a Lawyer?
People are not going to agree with
That,
you.
who cares what they think? They know I'm right. Why pay a lawyer to negotiate for you in this day and age? I can't believe that doctors still don't have this. Why we even need to talk about this?
Right.
A resident with just a needle and a syringe. We're kind of just like, why did y'all?
I don't know. Why y'all like that?
It's still a compelling story, though, I think. I think it's a really
but I want to
compelling
know
story.
why y'all like that so much.
And then we're going to finish it off with Team Tom or Team Gisele. And as you all see already, Renee can literally keep going for days on this, and I'm not gonna beat this anymore. So I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it as it is.
That's it. And that was the top 10 YouTube shorts for Docs Outside the Box in 2022.
Now I want
Give
each
us a little confetti, Alfred.
I want each and every one of y'all to keep listening if you're on the audio version. But listen, in the YouTube version, like I'm telling you, this is a great experience. So right now I decided, so we went to a coffee house or to a cafe in West Orange like a week and a half ago just to have like a business meeting and so forth after dropping off our kids. And they had this piece of artwork that for me, I was like, this is dope. I love it.
That's why I brought you there.
Right. So I saw this piece of artwork that for me spoke to me. I love it. And I just said, I got to have it in the podcast studio. And it's Childish Gambino, otherwise known as Donald Glover. I've actually been a fan of him since 2016 onwards. I really wasn't a big fan of.
When he was on Community.
Community is not my type of show. I don't really watch Community and stuff like that. I liked
him on Community.
But I'm a big fan of his music. I've always been a big fan of his music, his albums. A big fan of Atlanta. Atlanta really took me over the top with him. And then obviously, you know, the album or the song that had This Is America, that was just like, I love it. So I saw a picture right here. I don't know if you guys can see it, or a painting that they have of the ending of the video, This Is America. And I said, I just got to have that in my studio. So we're going to do a little bit of a quick unboxing. It came in the mail yesterday. So I figured I'd share this with y'all. Now this is I think this is an acquired painting, right? Like you can't just put this in your house, right? It literally it is Donald Glover smoking a cigarette. A very iconic part of the video.
Yeah.
Look, I can't put this in a regular house because I don't want my kids thinking that it's okay to smoke.
Right, you got to put that in the studio.
But this is work. You know, means something to me. Just from the color of the painting to the texture, to his hair, to just what it means to be him smoking a cigarette in this video. It just means a lot to me. And that's why I really resonated. I wanted to get it. And I wanted to share this with y'all and let y'all know that I'm going to put this somewhere.
Does it say who the artist is?
The artist, it doesn't say who it is.
It says CROB, it looks like.
Yeah. I don't know who it is. But he did a great job. I love it. It's called This Is America. And we're going to put it up. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to put it.
Shout out to Harper's Cafe.
Is that where we went to Harper's Cafe?
Yeah, in West Orange, New Jersey. Shout out to Harper's Cafe.
You know how we do in Essex County, you know. So we rock it in areas that I couldn't rock with when I was a kid because, you know, I'm just in Irvington. So it's too many bus transfers to get to West Orange and stuff. You know, so now that I can drive there, I'm like, hey, let me go and get some coffee from there. So, and then the company that we got it from is called Canvii, CANVII. And that's it, man. So listen, this is the last episode of 2022.
Yep.
I think we said all the platitudes that we could in the beginning. But once again, I just want to say thank you all for listening to the show, spending all this time with us. It really takes a lot of work to put this together. And the team is very appreciative of what y'all are listening to and leaving us comments and so forth. Listen, 2023, you're going to notice a very different version of Docs Outside the Box, a very intentional version of Docs Outside the Box, because we're going to the top. We're not playing anymore, and we want to be the podcast that medical professionals, healthcare professionals listen to. And even if you're just a professional, listen to on advice on not just money, medicine, but just in general, like just kind of lifestyle advice. And I think that that's much needed nowadays also. So you're going to see a different Docs Outside the Box, and you're going to see some different projects from us. So with that, Any parting words, Dr. Renee?
All I have to say is, happy and safe New Year. I don't know if you guys are making New Year's resolutions. We were actually just invited to the Earn and Invest podcast with Doc G. And, we talked about just kind of New Year's resolutions and what that means. Are they helpful? Are they detrimental? Are they realistic? Like,
they're detrimental.
What's going on? Well, let them listen to the podcast episode. That's going to be coming out in January. So it's the Earn and Invest podcast. Myself and Dr. Nii are panelists with two other wonderful people. And, Doc G just takes us through this discussion about New Year's resolutions, which I think got really nuanced and was very well informed. So if you haven't subscribed to that podcast, I suggest you do. You can listen to us once it comes out in January.
Yeah. And that's it, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Y'all be safe during this holiday season.
Yes, be safe, please.
Make sure that if you are not following this episode, make sure you follow this episode on Apple Podcasts. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe on Spotify as well as Google Podcasts or wherever you are listening to this. And if you're on YouTube, hey, give us a thumbs up and or give us a subscribe.
And
appreciate it.
Subscribe. Don't do an or. Just and subscribe. Do like my 3-year-old does. Okay? We're gonna say bye-bye and subscribe to my channel.
Yeah, that's when you know your son is watching too much TV.
Well, he doesn't have a channel, so I'm not quite sure where I'm subscribing, but I told him I subscribed. And he was very happy about that.
All right, y'all. We'll catch you on the next episode, y'all. Peace.
Happy New Year!